Well, hello everyone. It's 6:30, and so we'll get this party started. And it's so wonderful to see so many familiar names out there. My name is Marnie Peel, and I'm the Communications Director for AARP North Dakota. And I'm so glad you are joining us tonight for our LGBTQ plus Lounge and Learn: How LGBTQ plus Elders Can Create Generational Change with Faye Seidler. We're going to have a great program tonight. AARP is committed to supporting the LGBTQ plus community. Our reflects our core belief in the dignity, worth, and potential of every individual. We reject discrimination based on a person's age, race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender identity. We see diversity not as a reason for division, but as a source of strength. LGBT communities are a vital part of the quilt of American life, and today our guest, Faye Seidler, will explore how different generations make that quilt even more colorful and stronger. So before I introduce Faye, which I look forward to doing, I just want to run through some minor housekeeping things. So first, regarding questions, this is a meeting, and so we're going to have interaction. Faye is great about that. And if you have questions as we go along, go ahead and drop them either in the chat or the Q&A. You can use either one. And she may address some of these questions as we go, kind of if it feeds in, but we'll make sure that we see them, facilitate that, and get those questions answered, as many as we can by the end. And then also, just please know this program is being recorded. You can turn your camera off or change your name. Just wanted to make sure you know that. And if you loved this and want to share the program, feel free to let a friend know that it'll be posted out on YouTube at youtube.com AARPND. So now I get to introduce our speaker, Faye Seidler. She is an award-winning advocate who specializes in suicide prevention, LGBTQ plus populations, and state data. I love that combination, and I really appreciate her focus on data. It's really refreshing. She was born and raised in North Dakota and has a decade of experience in community organizing, public speaking, and professional development training. She's known for connecting and uplifting others, bringing communities together, and always keeping hope in focus. So with that, I will hand it off. Faye, take it away.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me tonight. And I'm going to get my PowerPoint shared and we're going to start talking about things. So I think the thing I like to talk about is that we will only be here for an hour. There's an infinitude of things we could talk about and cover, and we're not going to talk about everything. We're not going to cover everything. So I usually try to focus on some ideas. And the ideas that are going to be prevalent throughout this time I'm talking and time we're engaging here is that everyone has value. And that existence is resistance is the real message that I want you to leave here with, because just the act of you being here, the act of you being an elder, the act of you being possibly an LG plus elder in this space, that is so vital and important to the world that we see today and the world we can build tomorrow. So just keep that in mind. The first 4 bits of my 5 bits will actually just be like talking about how amazing elders are. So just get ready to be like serenaded to for a bit. And then I'll talk about some actual like ways to think about getting involved. I always feel kind of a bit humbled and nervous in the space because I'm not an elder. And what I'm going to talk about is like, there's a lot of wisdom that you have that I don't. There aren't things I can educate you on. There are things you can educate me on and different things within life. So I kind of serve as this like temporal point, right? Connecting elders and youth, talking about the generational wisdoms that we have and keeping our elders and history at the forefront to make sure that we can learn the lessons that we need to as we become, or as we try to get involved in activism. So I've been in North Dakota my entire life. North Dakota is a community that I will live and die in. This is where I am and where I want to be. I am part of the LG plus community in several ways. I'm mostly known for being trans, but multiple identities here. And I'm a survivor of suicide. That's what leads a lot of my work is suicide prevention because of the experiences I had growing up in the state. Professionally, I work at Canopy Medical Clinic as a LGBTQ plus care coordinator. I work as a program manager for Harbor Health Initiative where I have a care directory. And then I am just a consultant. It's an easy way to refer to me. I'm just a person who tries to do work, like whatever that means. So like consulting, advocacy, philanthropy, but poor is kind of like I try to tell people like that's usually what I do. If I can help, I try to. I am not always able to, I'm not always perfect, but I try to help. And that's what leads a lot of the work that I do. And that's just kind of who I am. You can see some of the stuff I've done over here. I got an award a year ago for being the hometown hero in Bismarck at the summit. I'm in front of the 988 bus here with Jen, the director of First Link. And just, this is really important to me. While I do work with a lot of LGBTQ plus issues and populations, like it is always through this idea of how do we give people hope? And my work is really built on that hope piece. I developed this training for tonight, so I'm not as experienced in it as some of my other pieces. So I'm going to go through it the best I can, just some on reflection of things I wanted us to talk about when I think about these conversations. And the first one is the value of age, which is something I am learning. And this is an open question for people, but what is the worth of a decade of experience? Like, how valuable is that? A decade of experience. I'll give you some ways to think about this. How valuable is a decade of experience on a job? How valuable is a decade of working out, going to the gym, spending an hour at a gym each day? Or not, you don't have to do an hour, like let's 15 minutes, half an hour, you go for a walk. What about studying a topic? Living life. I want you to kind of think about your life and the stuff that you've done and the experience that you have with this question. What is the worth of a decade of experience? Because in a decade, you can get a degree. In a decade, you become very fit. You can become an expert in topics. A decade on the job means you're probably one of the best people at that job. And I'm sure many of you have multiple decades of experience, right? You have multiple decades of being a person, multiple decades of being around and learning. And if you can think of how valuable one decade is, think of how valuable 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, wherever you're getting to. What is the worth of a decade of experience? Because you have multiple. And as I get older, I'm really realizing the value of that myself, because I really started being an activist 10 years ago. I was basically nothing 10 years ago. I was kind of like a line cook and a high school dropout. Like that is where I was 10 years ago. And where I am today is a state leader in LG plus data because I put work into it and I worked on it. But I want you to think about that, how valuable time is, how valuable age is on this kind of thing. I see some of you participating in chat, which is good. Patience, mastery, ability to see things in more long term, absolutely. Ability to see how things have gone wrong so you don't keep on repeating the same mistakes. The ability to do things sometimes faster, be more intentional about it so you're not just being really frantic. I have a great story from a person who was a line cook, and he talked about like having like a younger guy on the line who would be, kind of do things as fast as possible and would be slower than that like veteran that was just intentionally doing what they needed to, not wasting any time, having the right conversations, having the right stuff. But you can learn a lot with just a decade. So to kind of go back to myself on this, I got started, or how I got started, or how an elder pushed me into the Pride Collective. So the reason this conversation is even happening today is because I came out at my job as trans to my entire workforce, and there was a older individual there who saw a lot in me. And I look back at it, I think that she was just like, okay, this person needs to get involved. So they took me to the Pride Collective. I'd never been involved in any kind of LG plus things before that. And they kind of pushed me in the door and was like, have fun. And I talked to, at the time, the Fargo Moorhead Pride, the Fargo Pride Community and Collective Center. And I talked to Jared, who is the person that was working at the time. And I just started talking to him about like, how do I get involved? How do I volunteer? How do I make a difference? And Jared didn't really know, but they're like, well, show up tomorrow, like come back. And based on having conversation with Jared and getting connected with like the Pride Collective at the time, I started to learn what that looked like. I started to learn from the people who were there, from the collective that was there, from the elders that were part of the board on how to grow into being an activist. And had I not had that generational wisdom and access to it from people who were older than me, I was younger 20s at the time, like I wouldn't be where I am now. I was so fortunate to connect to people who could steer me in the right direction and learn lessons when I could. And I'm where I'm at now after only a decade of work, which means that hopefully I will keep on doing that next decade and the decade further from that. But you have so much experience already, so much interactions with people, so much knowledge of growing up through history that I don't have access to. I have access to what I've experienced in 30 plus years, but that's not the full story. You come with so much experience to just living life in this area or in other areas that's so valuable for making sure that we can stay healed and centered and move forward with what's going on. And to reflect on 10 years, there is a marriage equality that we just celebrated in 2023. And when I look at this, what I remember, there's a lot of speakers that night, and John Strand came up and talked about a lot of his journey. And I'm just quoting a little line from that, where he talked about he looked around and there were no old gay men. And that was kind of a thesis of his experience as a younger gay man growing up in this area, especially with HIV, with AIDS pandemic happening, and a lot of the community trauma and loss. But it was this time where there was no generation. It was just the present. It was just existing and living as you could, where you could, but there weren't really youth or elders. It was just perpetual adults who were trying to survive. And what I want you to understand is the immense value that our LG plus elders bring to the spaces. The incredible, I'm not sure what word I'm looking for here, but like the fact that I can look up to someone who's older than me, the fact that queer youth can see what it's like, that they can grow up, that they can have a future, that is invaluable. It is invaluable for kids to see themselves as getting old. And that is the existence is resistance piece. Something that I really liked is the Trevor Project did a survey. They do often surveys on suicide prevention and what hope kids have. This was the 2022 survey, and one of the key points they said gave them hope was happy LGBTQ plus elders. Like, this is identified in data in survey. It's not just necessarily perspective. It is things that we can identify with kids, that they love, that there are these intergenerational connections that are possible. So happy LG plus elders is big on that list. Just being alive, just being here, just doing anything that you do in any space you are has value. And that's what I really want you to take away from this training, if nothing else. I think when we think about LG plus activism, especially with this training that's kind of more focused on that, we often think of like pride events or groups that are dedicated to, let's say, queer rights or gay rights or marriage equality and all these different things. Those are important, but equally important is having elder LG plus individuals that are volunteering at like at a soup line, at helping people out in their church or community, at helping people out wherever they find passion and want to get involved. It doesn't just have to be really dedicated LG plus activism, but it could just be anywhere you are as a person being proudly out in yourself and happy. That is change. That creates change. We often focus on big historical moments that could be like Stonewall or other things that had happened. And, we emotionally identify with those times. We see them as big moments of resistance. But when you look at the far picture, when you really zoom out, it's not those times that make change. It is all of those little conversations we have across our life that kids have talking to their parents, whether that was 50 years ago or today. It is little conversations we have all had in ways that we have all, the millions of us across our nation, contributed to a better culture by increasing education and understanding. Your existence is resistance. If you in any way feel guilty that you're not getting involved enough, don't. Any way that you are alive, any way that you are happy, that is an involvement that matters. And I really want you to know that as just the core of what we're talking about today. So just keep that in mind. A decade can make a huge amount of difference. And looking at marriage equality, passing in 2013 in Minnesota, later nationally in 2015, like that was only 10 years ago. Like, we have come so far. And before that, in 2003, it wasn't thought possible. Like in 1980, it seemed like a far distant, impossible future. So how will we feel in 2033? How will we feel 50 years from now? How much progress can we make that seemed impossible? These are the things I'm trying to bring up as just kind of the points to this. moving on, that's the value of age. So I want you to know that it's very valuable to have elders in our community. It's very valuable just to be there, to be around, to be happy, to be guides in any way that makes sense. So we're going to get into leveraging wisdom. Thank you for resistance is a secret of joy is another really good quote. And I originally heard this actually at the summit, and it was, I think, is their name Dominic was using that quote specifically, existence is resistance, but I didn't have the person which it came to. But so leveraging wisdom. Here's another open question, a little easier to engage with. What are some of the advantages elders have over adults and youth in advocacy? And if you just really want to dig in on youth or elders or really make some generational punches here, go ahead. We're gonna be open and honest. What are some advantages that elders have over our adults and youth in advocacy? What do you feel like you bring to the table that someone who is younger might not have? We can remember worse. Money, perspective from years of experience. What are some things you're proud to contribute today to the work? Potentially more respected as you get older. Stories. The value of stories is really important. A lifetime of stories. Collaborating with others, learning how to deal with conflict as a necessary thing of life is something that I think our youth and adults both could benefit a lot more from. So I don't know if this is a generational thing as much as it is a culturally Midwest thing, but I feel like we are kind of reserved up here. Like we don't like to be too big. Like we don't like to compliment ourselves or anything like that because we're always afraid 30 other people are going to put us down if we ever put ourselves out there. Realizing that there's not a lot of time left, that today could be the last day, or that the work has to be something we can contribute to now. Experiences throughout the life. But going back to that kind of thought train that I had, I feel like people don't necessarily access their own power in ways that they can and should. I think that you should feel valuable, and I think you should feel proud of the skills and talent that you have, and you should be loud about that. And the reason I think that should be the case is because I criticize myself a lot internally. Like we're all going to do that, right? I wish I was better about this. I wish I was able to speak more articulately about that. But I think about how I beat myself up. And then I think about youth to me, people who are maybe 15, 20, 24, 25, whatever. Like these are youth to me. And I think I don't want them to beat themselves up. I want them to be proud of what they do. I want them to be proud of putting something on. I want them to think about how, their work matters. And when I think about the ways I want to role model to people who are younger to me, I want it to be healthy. And I allow myself to celebrate myself so I can teach youth that it's okay to do that too. Or to teach elders it's okay to be proud of yourself and to put yourself out there, or to be proud of the virtues that you have. And I think that helps to kind of create that capacity for people to have good mental health and self-esteem so we're not all feeling like imposters up here. Despite the difficulty of life, another quote within chat, there is a power that helps us to focus on a positive future. And then realizing what is important and what is not can be essential. There's kind of a lot of noise that can happen, and being able to decipher what actually is important is essential. I think there's a lot of disagreements that can happen in communities. There's a lot of conflict or strife, but understanding that collectively supporting each other as much as we can and being kind to each other gets us way further in surviving just the stuff going on in our life. I had some ideas, depending on how we talked about this, about advantages and challenges. And you've identified a lot of the things that I've kind of thought about as advantages. But one thing is defying stereotypes. A lot of time people expect someone who is older to also be anti-gay or homophobic. They expect someone who is, let's say, with a religious background to be bigoted towards LGBTQ plus people. And I think the more that we see older individuals being involved and speaking up, the more that we can really challenge the narrative. It's just uh, part of our culture or part of our age, and you can really challenge that by showing up and talking and just being yourselves. You can show that it doesn't matter what your age is, it's still important to love and accept everyone, to give everyone chances to be themselves and be happy or thrive. And kind of like what was mentioned, I think sometimes you can get more respect just because you are older talking about this. The other idea is where it could be you have more available time. And that might not be true. This is not for everyone necessarily. Like, but sometimes you're not raising kids anymore and you have more time with that. Sometimes you are raising grandkids though, and that's just as much of a time sink sometimes. But some folks are retired too. And when I look at activism, youth are typically trying to live their life, and I think they should. Like they should be finding love, dating, going to college, making a career. They have a lot going on. And I think adults, usually of my age, are often raising families. And that could today now be a gay couple's raising a family or lesbian couple's raising a family, or they're working on their careers and they don't have as much time for this. And I'm one of the few people who I don't have a family I'm raising, so I have time for this work. But I look at single parents or I look at parents and I'm just like, how do you do anything else? You have a full-time job in raising a kid. So I think that's something that you can have a lot more time to do this work. You can have a lot more time to support people who are potentially doing this work and really being kind of mentors or even kind of just keeping like inventory of what's happening or the history of what's happening in ways that maybe younger people don't always appreciate. You could have more access to resources or wealth. This is, again, not for everyone, but a lot of times a younger person isn't going to have access to anything. They're not going to have access to much more than maybe the job that they have. And
Here, baby.
does
Get your
someone have a
monkey
point?
out.
I hear talking, but not very loudly.
Someone was unmuted. They're muted now.
Oh, okay, sounds good. But this is a point because sometimes things cost money. And when I think about donations, it's something I actually do frequently is I try to contribute money to different causes. I honestly don't think about like this cause needs $3,000 or it's not going to be successful, or I don't think about it necessarily with that mindset of like this has to for sure be a sustainable, perfect product going forward. I think about it as if I donate $100 to this effort that they're trying to do right now, I'm contributing to them that their work matters and I'm providing that support to them. And it's not world changing money, like $100 isn't changing someone's life necessarily, but it's showing them that their work does matter and it's worth trying things. And you don't have to give all your money away or even a lot of it, but a lot of what I do is like a $20 donation or a $50 donation, just little bits of support if you can afford it. And that is something that can go into the community and really help them out. I don't know if I talk about this in other parts, but Red River Rainbow Seniors does this with microgrants for LG Plus youth. That grant is still open. It will be until January 31st if you want to tell people about it for people who are serving queer youth within the Red River Valley area. But one of the things they did with that is they talked to the youth that they had given the money to, a $250 micro grant. It's helpful, it's not changing the world, but that intergenerational connection, that show of support, all of that was worth so much more than just monetary contributions. It was a show of you matter. And when you put just a little bit of money towards something, even $10, it just says, I'm putting my wallet where this is, I'm putting money where this is, and it is valuable to do. So there can be more accesses to wealth. You might have more access to influence in organizations. Maybe you have 30 years working as an insurance specialist and you know everyone that works in that insurance company and you can talk to them about issues coming up. You can talk to them when legislation comes up to try to deny care for trans people. You might have connections in those organizations that you've built for decades. For the places you worked or the people you know or the people that go to community events you go to. You typically will, through your life, start to develop these connections, even if you're not trying, because that's what time does. We just connect to the people around us and in our community, and you could have an enormous amount of influence. when I look at like the legislative session for 2023, it was a lot of folks that had this generational wealth and knowledge that they could pull from and talk to people who, you know, are now leading different positions of government, but they knew them as like a 20-year-old in college is actually something I get a lot. Like a lot of our leaders, like, oh, I remember having them as a student. I get that from some of our like elders in this area. So you have a lot of potential influence just from the connections you've made. And it's thinking about how you can leverage those to have conversations with people who see you as a person. Because the reality is there are a lot of people with, you know, prejudice or bigotry who they think about gay people as this, you know, other entity that is bad, just default bad, scary monster. But they often can see the people they personally know as, you know, reasonable, as friends. Those are the conversations that can really change hearts and minds, is when you already have that connection. And it can really change entire organizations and entire causes if you can just have that good conversation with someone where they're like, okay, I get this now. Trans people are just people and we shouldn't try to make their life harder. That's only an effective conversation when you really know someone, when they really know you and are ready to listen and be honest and open to those conversations. This kind of ties into that, but generally the networks and connection pieces. You probably have access to a lot of networks, and just depending on how long you've lived in this area or not, you can also tap resources from places you might have spent time in before. These are people you can talk to because your friends who are also maybe a little bit higher in age also have a lot of connections. Like if you start to talk to the networks of individuals who are a little bit older, like it starts to be entire communities, because you will have an elder who has a kid who is now a CEO of a company and has relationships with like 30 other people. And you can find that there is these networks of family and community that you can tap just because you know these people. You can ask them questions. You can like see what's going on. This is something I've done in the last decade, and I can't imagine just how much more you can learn throughout decades, how many more connections you can have or history you can build with people. Because I think like even our most hated enemies, after we've spent 10 years with them, we're just like, okay, whatever, like come to dinner, we'll eat, I don't even care. I just feel like that's a connection that happens just with age and time. And then wisdom, we've talked about this kind of throughout this training, but wisdom of history, being part of history and institutional knowledge. I think that's so valuable. Something I feel like today for like what you might have over youth and adults is I don't think adults or kids know how the government works today. I don't want to be that person who's like our schools are failing our kids. Are we teaching civics anymore? But honestly, like most people who are younger than 40 have no idea anything about politics. They don't know like anything about city hall, about actual like legislative session. I myself I'm the same. I didn't learn until 2 years ago because I didn't think it was important or part of my life, you know, all those different things, but I didn't know how to do anything with that. If you've grown up in a time where we are more invested within government and able to understand how to, you know, talk to lawmakers and be involved, like that's something where that is so important. There are kids today who don't know how to write a letter. Like they don't know where the stamp goes or the address. Like there are some basic things that we have lost. While sometimes, and I'll talk about challenges, I think elders like, you know, get, uh, you know, presumed to not know technology like computers or smartphones. Kids don't know how to write a letter. So, I mean, it's kind of like we can go both ways on that. Like there are skills that are important for us all to have and potentially teach each other. And another comment, connections are really important in rural communities too, where your culture is your family in a lot of ways in those smaller places. But these are advantages that you can lean on, and they're not totally inclusive to everyone. There's more than just this. But I want you to know how valuable you are. That is the point of all of this. There's so much value you have across your life, and I want you to leverage it. I want you to be able to think about it and leverage it for how you see yourself getting involved. Because when people haven't been an activist or haven't been involved, they often think of themselves as small. Like, what can I contribute as just a person? What do I know? But when you tap into how much you know, how many people you know, that becomes a place to make a lot of change happen. There are challenges too. I think I also see a lot of times elders aren't respected enough. I see a lot of younger people being, let's say, more hot-blooded about all this stuff, and like, I have figured it out. I have the answers of the world, and actually, you're wrong and shouldn't criticize me. And I feel like my life hack is I actually just listen to elders. Like, instead of having to learn all my own lessons, I just listen to folks who have gone through it. And I think that's why I'm a bit further along than a lot of other people my age, is because it's so important to listen to the people who have lived here and lived a long time for what's going to work or not. So that is a problem, though. There's a lot of times youth and adults just don't give you the time of day because they think they figured out the answers. If that's the case, tap me and I can go fight them for you. I don't know if you want to get like a younger person in the room to like be like, hey, let's listen. I can make that fight. There are a lot of people who I feel like we don't care about history today like we used to. That's just another kind of opinion of mine, I guess, but I care about history a lot. And I think that's why I care so much about elders and why I care so much about intergenerational connections is I look at history. There is a comment about how bad it used to be. I look across all of that history to give me hope today because I've read what it was like in the 20s, in the 50s, in the 80s. Like, I read the insurmountable challenges and trauma our community has faced and is still here today, able to smile. And to me, the challenges of today are like vast, but we have already achieved dreams we never thought possible. And that's what gives me hope continually, is that even if there are challenges today, we've overcome so much. We will overcome anything in front of us because we always have. There's not a lot of intergenerational access points. Like, our queer youth, LGBT plus youth, they're in their own spaces in their GSAs or whatever. We have adults that typically are doing bars, like they're going to drag performances, or maybe they have some advocacy. And then you have more spaces for elders, but there's not really a good space that's like the whole community can come here and talk to each other. I hope we can create spaces like that. There's a little bit of stuff happening, like River Rainbow Seniors has done that with the micro grants for our youth, but it's hard to make these connections. And I hope that we can make more of them because I want more of our queer adults or our LG plus adults and youth to have access to the wisdom and just the knowledge of you can get old, you can be happy. This isn't part of the training, but I really hate that a lot of our culture is trying to be young forever because to me, it's aging is such a victory to me. Like, I didn't think I was going to make it as long as I did. I didn't think I was going to still be here. And to me, growing up is like a kind of divinity. It's the ability to be older is something I never thought I would claim. And I want more youth to see this, how amazing it is to get older. It is such an incredible thing if we can look at it the right ways. And then things change pretty fast. No cap, for real, for real. That's some generational slang for you. No cap, for real, for real. FR is more like, it's below my generation. It's like Zoomer talk. Basically up there is skibbity, which you might know if you have grandkids and stuff like that. But things change all the time. And even myself, like, who is, let's say, younger, I was talking to a bunch of teachers about, kids do go on YouTube and they do find this information. And the teachers were like, they don't go on YouTube, they go on TikTok. And I'm like, oh, so YouTube is old now. Like, so I have to, I get to experience those generational pains of kids looking at me saying like, were you alive during the dinosaurs? And I can say I was alive before the internet. Like, I mean, not the whole thing not the fundamentals, but I was alive before Google. Like, and this is just like mind blowing to kids. So it's been cool for me to kind of just see what it's like getting older. Even though I'm still relatively young, I'm starting to feel what age is. And to me, I feel like all of this, like, there's a lot of great things that come with it that I don't think we talk about enough in our culture in general. Yeah, I'm sounding like 15 to 11-year-olds. Like that's the language. And here's, okay, this isn't part of this either, but one complaint I have is I remember being a kid and having those same like issues where we had our own language and parents were like, all the words you say are silly and don't say them. And I'm now offended that people my age just don't remember that, I guess. And they're like every generation has their own words. So I don't know. It's just a thing that happens. The point of that was leveraging wisdom. So you can leverage a lot of things going on in your life and the life that you've experienced just from being alive. There's so much value that comes with that. Yeah, I'm obsessed with youthfulness. It's profitable. It's profitable for people to be very vested in trying to look younger forever. I don't really care about that myself. I care about healthy. Like I work out, I drink water so I can be healthy for as long as possible. And I try to encourage that in others too. So we talked about the value of age and leveraging some of what your age, the gifts that come from that in your wisdom, and then going into making change. Now, this isn't really the actual make change part. This is really the sell point of how important you are. Your life has impact, your story has meanings, and the things you do matter. I want you to know that. Like even as we get to today, we're facing another really scary challenge in our culture. We're facing a lot of vitriol and negative comments. Our trans kids in particular aren't looking to be that safe in the next couple of years. Like we also have families that love and support their kids who are gay or trans. We've never had that before. We've never had that as a culture that has really been accessible for people. And I want you to know the reason that we are here today and have all of those victories and have all of that capacity for love and joy and beauty and thriving is because of work your generation did. Like the work I do is possible only because of it. And that's why I care about history so much and seeing the work that's been done. You can check this out. This is Jeff Molaski's dissertation. They're a UND professor that leads the Pride Center, I think is what they call it. Pride, Campus Pride. I feel like I'm wrong on that. But they did a history looking at North Dakota activism, and they looked at what was going on in colleges in the 1980s. They looked at what was going on across the culture in North Dakota, and I didn't know a lot of this stuff. Like I kind of assumed that like a lot of our gay activism of the 1980s was like based in North Dakota, or sorry, based in like Fargo, right? Because you think of Fargo as maybe the more progressive area. And their dissertation shows like a lot of this starting in UND, starting at Grand Forks, and other stuff happening in Fargo and other stuff starting to happen in other places. But the fact that in the 1980s, there was people getting together, there were support groups that are trying to happen. This was 45 years ago is incredible to me because kids that were doing that then are now 60. Kids who are kind of doing that around that are 40 to 60 at this time, but their work was also based on the adults of that day. So the individuals who were 30, 40, or 50 were trying to create this space for them. There has been this activity, that's you. There has been this activity that's been going on for a really long time, and I want to connect us to that. Even 16 years ago, there was this gigantic turnout for our gay rights for another marriage equality fight that happened. This was now 5 years prior to Minnesota making that change and 7 years prior to the marriage equality that we see in 2015 and 16 years ago now. But there has been this fight of people long before I ever got involved in activism, long before I got involved with the Pride Collective and the Pride Center. And the only reason I am here, like I keep on saying, in talking to you and even, trying to humbly be the host of this, is that this was all there for me. All of this work allowed me to do the work I do, and I build on it. I build on this vast amount of generational work that's been happening for a very long time that has even given me this capacity, because if I was instead born in the 1950s, I don't know if I could have even transitioned, and I don't know if I would still be here. I don't know if I was born in the 1980s if that would be the same story. I don't know if I would have been scared at the time based on all the vitriol and lack of support and resources. I don't know if I would have wanted to be involved in that fight because of how scary it was. Like compared to how scary it really was in that generation and the next one, I consider my work kind of easy. Like as much as there are challenges and as much as there's still risk to me doing this work, compared to what it was, it's not hard. It was hard. It was enormously hard. And I take the so much gratitude that this has all been done. Now we're doing Breaking Barriers, and we are collecting the story of people that have contributed to this work in big and small ways. I've always praised Breaking Barriers. I'm part of Breaking Barriers now, by the way. I did an interview and plan to do more just to kind of look at the chronicling of my life. But what I love about Breaking Barriers is that, like I said earlier, we often attribute movements to kind of select people, right? Like, the leaders of different places or different causes, but it's all of us, and all of our stories matter, and all of our lives matter, and the ways we have conversations matter. And I love Breaking Barriers because it captures that. every person has hundreds of people they've impacted across their life, and breaking barriers helps us learn about those lives. So we can see what it was like, see where people were, see what movements happened. One of the unfortunate things about all the stuff I talked about before, like even just going back, when I really got involved in like the early 2010s, I actually kind of saw the ruins of a lot of people's effort. It kind of seemed like a lot of people had given up or moved away for different reasons at that time. And it was kind of discouraging because I was seeing these records of people who either weren't here anymore or moved away, and I felt like no one else remembered it. And that's, built into my activism today of caring about history, but that's why I really value breaking barriers and have always promoted it as much as I can because it's so instrumental. And people might not know this, but I've been advocating for Red River Rainbow Seniors to be the Pride Marshal for 3 years, I think. And I was successful with other people. And we got the Red River Rainbow Seniors to be the Pride Marshals for our 2024 Pride Parade. And this is, again, just to show that the work matters. People see it. People care about it. People want to have elders at the forefront. They want this to be part of the work and to celebrate age. Like, this is part of the conversation. This is part of the connection, and it's worth celebrating. The work is really important. And, I've been praising Red River Rainbow Seniors a lot. Also, Missouri River Seniors represent, like, doing great work within the Bismarck area. And in little and small ways, not even bigger organizations, but, a couple older folks getting coffee in a small town in Minot. That's it too. That's community. That is how we make change, is creating these capacities and creating this through line of history to acknowledge and appreciate all this work that has been done. So, making change. A lot of this, like I said at the beginning, was really just like celebrating, like being elders and the value you have, because I want you to know that. The work can feel extremely dismaying, and I know a lot of you have been doing work one way or another, even just trying to survive for decades, and it just feels like, is it just gonna be another 2 generations before we even get anywhere? And I want to reflect on the value of what we've already accomplished. I want us to not lose sight of that. I want us to know that it has mostly been victories. It has mostly been ways for us to feel safer and more accepted and thrive and find love, be married in ways we never have before. So just as you get worried or stressed about the future, really think about the impact you've already had. It has already saved countless lives. I guarantee you that. I am confident in saying that. So when we get into opportunities, that is all why you're incredible and amazing. So let's go into opportunities. When anyone approaches me of any age and says, Faye, I don't like how the world is right now. I want to get involved. What do I need to do? And I don't like that question because I think people, they're anxious and they want to just do good work, but you're going to burn out if you just get in there to do the hard work that needs to be done. And I always tell them, what do you want to do? What was missing in your life that you want to make better for other people? And that's how you should get involved, because that is how you prevent burning out. When you are personally invested in the work that you are doing, that is resiliency against how difficult the work can be. And when people ask me, how do I get involved? What should I do? I say, reflect to yourself, what do you want to do? And then know that you have the power to do it and to start it and to make conversations happen, to support causes that are already doing that work. So I often don't have, okay, everyone, legislative session's coming up, so here are your assignments. Like, if you want stuff like that, I can definitely help you out. But think about the ways that the things that impacted you in your life across all of it. What was missing? What do you want to make sure is not missing in other people's lives? And to me, that is why I do my work in suicide prevention. And it's a reason I'm able to continue doing it, because at the end of the day, it's not really about me, but it's about this, I can't stand the idea other people would suffer like that. And when I feel burnt out or exhausted or feel like I can't do anything ever again, that feeling never goes away. And it always reminds me, take care of yourself, be safe to yourself, be kind to yourself, but just, we have to do this. This has to be what I do. So there's no right way to get involved, and that's what I want people to know. Any way you want to is valid. If you are surviving and living your life, that's valid. If you're having coffee with friends, that is good. That is creating change by itself. And I want you to know every action does have value, because none of us have the capacity to change the world by ourselves. None of us can change North Dakota by ourselves. None of us can protect tens of thousands of people in our state by ourselves. But all of us collectively doing a little bit is what makes change. So I do have some ideas. I have some prompts for ways for us to think about ourselves getting involved. The first one is take care of yourself and be kind to yourself. That's step one. You have to do that. And when people say they really want to be an activist for their whole life, or big ideas like that, big feelings, big passion, I'm like, okay, but first start with like brushing your teeth every night. Like first start with taking care of yourself as much as you can, drinking the water, making sure you're good. Because a lot of times we have anxiety when we put ourselves out there, we sacrifice ourselves in ways that aren't healthy, and it's not sustainable. I also want you to be kind to others. We get frustrated with each other in the LGBTQ plus community. We get frustrated with different things that can happen, with the directions people go, with opinions people have, with the language people use. We get frustrated, and a lot of us come from a background experiencing trauma, and it's harder to regulate some of those feelings. But what I understand from the work that I've done is that like we have much greater struggles than each other. We have much greater struggles than our disagreements or the ways that we might not like each other because of stuff that happened. There are bigger things out there. And I know this is a thing people often go to, but I think about our kids, and I think about what I want them to see for our gay kids, for our trans kids. I want them to see a community that's really kind to each other, that shows love to each other, that models this behavior, that it's not okay to attack each other. So the first step in any activism to anyone I talk to is take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and be kind to others. Step two is everything else. So step two is anything you want to do out there is completely fine. So I have a couple of different ideas to look at. Volunteering is a really good one. So you can volunteer. I have a few different ideas up here: League of Women Voters, badass grandmas for democracy. Sorry, I'm losing like the thread on that one. There's Missouri River Rainbow Seniors. There's the AARP. Don't know why that logo is pixelated, but the rest are so crisp. Apologies to the AARP staff on that one. North Dakota Human Rights Coalition, River Rainbow Seniors. I think most of these representations are represented in the folks who are on this call right now. But when you think about volunteering, think about it as also building your own community of people. It's not just going to show up and fight against bad bills or show up to fight for democracy or all these different things. It's also to be part of other people, to be involved in these things, and to offer the talents that you have and the experiences that you have. It's to build community, because community is the biggest resiliency against things like suicidality or depression. And the NDHRC does have a new website that you can check out with that new logo. And that new logo, let me just say, way better than the last logo. I think I can say that if I'm complimenting this one and kind of disparaging the last one, but love this new logo. Get involved with individuals. And I feel like a lot of people here are connected already. So think about this with the friends you know. Think about this with the people you talk to. Think about this with the groups that you might go to that aren't involved in stuff like this. Get people connected, get people engaged. So those are some ideas. There's not a right way to do it. If you want to start a tea in tea, like spill the tea kind of like, what I tell people in the very simplest terms, you having coffee with someone else to talk about life and advocacy, that is the fundamental unit of change. It doesn't have to be bigger than that. And if you hear the history of our LG Plus Summit, that's how it started. It was coffee between Barry and Aaron talking about the life of what was going on in North Dakota. Just talk to someone else is the basis of any kind of activism and involvement. And here are some ways to get involved. You can stay informed. So I have a lot of newsletters that go out, and I'm a de-siloer. So that means I try to bring in all these different organizations together so you can see what's going on. Maybe you actually, your passion is veterans. I have a lot of connections to our VA and veterans and suicide prevention for veterans. I can connect you to that. Let's say your passion is labor rights. I can connect you to people who care about that. Let's say your passion is, being involved with the religious communities or like reconciliation in Christ type work. We have the interfaith service on today. A lot of members are there from that. Any way you want to get involved, I can probably connect you to something. And I try to promote all the stuff that's happening across the state. I have a news show that goes on Sunday nights where I talk about this stuff. I talk about League of Women Voters and their advocacy 101 training that's now available in public. But basically, I'm a connector. You say, hey, I'm looking for X, Y, or Z, and I'll connect you. Or you could tell me, Faye, this is a really good thing. You should know about it. I will take your wisdom very gladly. I also do work with like kind of history keeping. So I have like a whole history of what the feelings were during the 7th annual summit. So there are places you can volunteer. There's ways you can stay informed. I could theoretically like do a presentation. It's like, here's exactly how you talk to a senator or stuff like that. But I want this to be broadly applicable, not just to the people here, but also, your friends or family or community. And I just want you to know like those core values. You matter, your work matters. The generation of work that you've been part of and contributed to is the reason even people like me can carry the torch like I am to eventually hand it off to, some upstart that feels like they know how to change the world. Like that's my role in this right now. But the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you a 3-minute video, and it's the start to the Night of Hope. I host the Night of Hope every year. I've done it for 2 years, and I intend to do it as long as I can. It's the Trans Night of Hope, and it takes place after the Trans Day of Remembrance. It is geared towards trans people, but I don't see a lot of separation. I think that we're all in this together. And I think that hope for trans people is hope for everyone. And the reason I want to show you this video, it's just the introduction to it, it's just 3 minutes of it, is because I talked a lot about how much generational change we've already made and how important it is and how valuable all of that work has been. But when we watch this intro, I want you to see it. I want you to see the hope that we have built in the world today. And that's the point of this video.
So far has been leading me to find out.
Oh, cool. So I was testing that video earlier out, and since I was testing it, is now halfway through it, so I have to make sure that I can start it from the beginning. Give me a second. I think we're gonna troubleshoot this in real time.
Who it is that you...
Okay, I got this. We did it. Problem solved in real time.
I've heard myself say que sera, sera so many times. You'd think I'd come to terms with what's to come, but I still wish the future was clear and I could let go of my fear, 'cause I'm afraid I'm still holding on to some. But I've been told it doesn't make a lick of difference, even if I worry myself sick, because every single second brings me closer to see whoever it is that you were meant to be. I could say that my whole life so far has been leading me to find out who it is that you are, and all that time, or at least in part, was spent making room for you in my life and in my heart. And the further we keep going, the closer I get to seeing the first version of you I will ever have met. And every subsequent edition reveals to me whoever it is that you were meant to be. Whoever it is that you were meant to be, you will always be our own, but time will make it clear that you're not ours alone. It'll take a whole village to make sure you're growing up so we can see whoever it is that you were meant to be. 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 I don't care who it is that you are. If you're here, I'll be here for you as well. Even if it takes some time before you or I or anyone can tell, but who it is you are all along the way will make it clear for me to see whoever it is in the end that you were meant to be. Whoever it is that you were meant to be, you will always be our own, but time will make it clear that you're not ours alone. It'll take a whole village to make sure you're growing up so we can see whoever it is that you were meant to be. 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 Yes, you were meant to be. 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 Yes, you were meant to be. Yes, you were meant to be. You were meant to be. Yes, you were meant to be. 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 You were meant to be.
What I want you to understand is we're your kids generationally, kids and grandkids, right? We have created a world where we can have something like that. And I'm not really here to tell you how to be like, guide you on how to be an activist, because you've lived a longer life than me and probably know more than me. So I did two things. You're valuable and keep hope. That's really what I wanted to do tonight. And I can connect and give you a lot of different things, a lot of different entry points into volunteering or activism or anything like that. But really what I wanted you to have was hope that the fight is worth fighting still. The work still matters and you still matter in it. That is the real message that I have for tonight, that existence is resistance. And when I look at videos like that, I'm connected to the generation of it, right? That we've claimed this space in a way that I didn't think was possible when I was a kid. Like, I mean, I grew up in the late 80s and 90s. So, I mean, as a kid, I got to experience what some of that was like. And that's part of an hour-long video. So there's a lot more hope in there and some more songs, but that's kind of what I wanted to show you. To kind of wrap up here, I know we're getting close to time. I have a lot of resources too that you can always access. So I have the directory, which is for anything you're looking for medical care. I have providers all across the state who are affirming for our gay and trans community. And you can search them by town, by city. This is something that I wanted to develop. There's a quote of me in a 2015 paper saying we should do something like this. And I became the change that was needed. So I now have this, a directory of all these affirming providers that we never would have had before. I do a lot with data. So if you ever need work with data, grant writing, organizational stuff, I'm the person that kind of keys in on that. And then I have a resource that is just like a thing for anyone to put up in an office or whatever, that is all of the like, important resources that individuals might need. My work does focus specifically on our youth a lot of the time, but I care about everyone. I just specialize within our youth, but this is kind of the work that I do. If there's work that you want to do, I want to help you. I want to promote it. I want to support it in any way that I can. And then my final message is hope is 75% of the way to hope. So that's my Midwestern message. I will say that Governor Waltz had a similar thing, but I was saying this first, just so you know. I was saying this like years ago. It's always been my thing. But I really do believe in the future. And I know as time goes on, I will be an elder, right? And I'll be the person that hopefully can guide adults on what they're doing and guide youth in that same way. But I want you to know that this work you're still doing and it's still important, but there are people that are still rising up. There are people like me and other advocates in the community that appreciate the history, that appreciate all that has been happening generationally before us and all that you still contribute today. Like I've always made it a mission to support as much as I can, like the work with River Rainbow Seniors and now the Missouri River Seniors. So that I think is about what we have for time. There's like a thing that AARP is doing, so I'll stop sharing my screen.
Well, this has been really wonderful, and I've really been grateful for the active chat going on, people sharing their ideas and engaging that way. And if you didn't look at the chat, all of the links are there, so please go and grab those. We can also get them to you, but if you get to Faye's site, I think pretty much everything that we have noted in the chat can be found there. She's a very thorough human, and grateful for that. One of the things that she said is she can't make direction and say things like, okay, everyone, legislature's coming up, here are your assignments, but I can, and here are your assignments. There is some advocacy training coming up here at AARP, and we have that. It's tomorrow is our online training, and Thursday is an in-person training here in Bismarck. It's not too late to register, particularly for the online training. And we'll be talking a lot about exactly those things that they talked about, is how you make change at this really important moment in time. You know, how to talk to legislators, you understand you know, how government works. And so now let's talk about how to get in there and make sure you're heard. So we'll be doing a lot of things talking about kind of our main focuses for the legislative session, which are fraud and housing, which I know is something that people feel pretty strongly about, property tax, and prescription drug costs. So things that kind of cross the barrel. But these trainings that will provide, once you have those tools under your belt, you can use them in any way that makes sense. So there's just a lot of great trainings out there, and we're offering 2 of them. And then the second item I want to share is that we have an advocacy day at the Capitol coming up. We'll be briefing what the issues are and talking about how we're going to approach things on January 19th. And then we'll be at the Capitol all day on the 20th. So more information on our website at aarp.org/any events. And there's a slide up that says that. And then beyond that, I just want to thank our collaborators so much. This would not have come together without the Red River and Missouri River Rainbow Seniors. So wonderful groups make such a difference. I've been leveraging a kitchen cabinet to make sure that all these things, all these ideas are vetted and people are feeling good about what we're bringing together. And then thanks to Doreen Striley and Josh Askig, who have been behind the scenes helping out. And of course, thank you, Faye, for being here today and for all that you do in North Dakota and beyond. We're so grateful for you. And all of you will receive a follow-up email with a survey link where you can provide us with your feedback. We're always really, really anxious to make sure you are that you give us feedback. And I see there's several questions in here. So, you know, for those of you who need to jump off, go ahead. But there's a question about your Sunday night program, Faye. Do you still have a Sunday night program?
Yep, so every Sunday night on Facebook, and then later on YouTube, I host it's usually about a 20-minute segment, and I cover all the news related to basically human interests. That could be human rights, that could be like healthcare, social work, education, important stuff in politics. And I just kind of go over and curate the news that I see all across the state, as well as like stuff nonprofits are doing, or like the AARP. And then I highlight that in just like a 10-minute segment, and then I usually focus on like bigger important stuff that's going on. And sometimes I do interviews with people in the community. But I will also be doing, during our legislative session, I'll be doing a nightly like 5-minute primer. And that's where I invite people to let me know what's going on so I can help the community stay informed on stuff. But I keep that up. And the news tab of my website has like all of my emails and all of my like ways to engage and stay informed. And it's reciprocal. So like if you want me to promote something, you just have to ask. If you want me to make something a center of my show, I'm happy to do so. And and I love this, if you give me a video of yourself talking about what you care about, your cause, your organization, that's really what I want to put on my show. Like, it's a community-based show. I want to show people the actual faces attached to these organizations. So it's not just, the organization, it's like this person with the organization. So yep, I do all that, and I plan to do it for the foreseeable future.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Faye. And my colleagues are popping more things in the chat about our January 19th and 20th event. There's a bus that comes from the east, and we will cover hotel rooms on the night of January 19th. So if you do come to town, just get out there and register so you know more about that. So I just wanted everyone to know that. And with that, I want to thank you all for being here and send you off into this cold, snowy night, at least over here in Bismarck. Stay safe and be well.
Thanks for having me, everyone. I really appreciate your time. I hope it was useful.
Thanks, Faye.